All right, well, day 3 of Blister Summit 2023, and it is a powder day. I know we just came in from skiing some powder, but I'm here with Christoph Lentz, International Product Manager for Fischer. And so welcome, Christoph. We're really glad to have you yet again at the summit.
Yeah, great to be here. It's even better when it snows like it is right now.
Yeah, we've heard a lot from you about ski boots in 2 panel sessions now, both from the 2022 Blister Summit as well as this year. So anyone who wants to hear more about all your knowledge related to ski boots, there's plenty of it out there. But today we're going to go pretty deep on a specific lineup from you guys. Before we get into that, just give us a bit of background with how you started with Fischer and what your role looks like today.
Yeah, I am one of 2 product managers for Alpine ski boots, based at the headquarters for Fischer in Ried im Innkreis in Upper Austria. Mm-hmm. I'm responsible for specifically the Alpine boot collection, so nothing to do with skis, and the touring side is also managed by a separate colleague of ours. And our mission is to bring year over year a successful international ski boot collection to market. I grew up in Park City, Utah. I have Bavarian German roots through my mother, who grew up in Garmisch-Partenkirchen. But yeah, growing up in Park City, my last year's racing was a Fischer athlete that connected me on the race side, going up to Mount Hood, doing a lot of demo camps. And one thing led to another. Was looking for a change in 2019, and things worked out, and found myself in Europe.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So you're now based in Austria, and I guess before we get too far into it with what we're talking about today, let's just give a little bit of background, I guess, the broader series of RC4, so people can kind of know the origin and the roots of what that means within the Fischer brand.
Yeah, great question, and something we probably don't talk enough about. Older viewers will probably know the RC4 C4 brand from the 70s, 80s, was a brand of racing ski and a whole very successful collection of racing skis. That has developed and gotten into the RC4 brand franchise name. Very successful on skis, especially piste skis, and it really stands for our racing top-level performance within Fischer. The way the development is structured is there's the standard Alpine division, but there is also the Alpine race division. Mm-hmm. And so everything with RC4 is really associated with core technologies coming from that race division. Put shortly, RC4 is really the highest level of performance within the Fischer collection, and is a universal name that we use on the Alpine stuff. Getting to the point that in that range we sell a lot of skis. Boots-wise, we've been not as present in this high-performance boot category. Mm-hmm. So it made sense this year with our brand new concept that we're very proud of to really brand it with this name once and for all, RC4. Within that RC4 franchise, we have 3 different concepts that are completely unique, different mold sets, different fits, LV, MV, and HV. And we'll get more into, I think, the centerpiece, the MV one.
Yeah, we definitely will. So for this 23-24 season, you're releasing an entire line of RC4 boots that is going to consist of basically 3 different lasts.
Correct.
So it's an entire lineup. So that's a little bit, I guess, different than what you've done with RC4 in the past, where it's mostly just been sort of a low volume or sort of like race-oriented boot. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, to take a look back where we had a low volume boot that was RC4, the Curve GT, where it had that RC4 suffix to say it was a performance boot, but the real boot was the Curve, and the GT was the suffix to denote that it was a low volume. We've removed all that
Thank you.
confusion. We have really RC4 tells you it's a performance boot, a performance product on par with what we've reached on the ski side. And then it's just LV. LV comes in at 98, and then it progresses up from there.
Gotcha. So I think we'll talk a little bit more maybe through the specifics of plastic compositions and things like that, but I guess let's really highlight that medium volume boot, which I know is the big one for you guys.
Yeah, as I think has reached the internet by now. We built a brand new concept that features the BOA, which has caught the attention. But this was really from the ground up a new boot for that mass market segment. We know there's a bell curve of foot shapes, so there's less low volume feet compared to mid volume, compared to high volume. So really that center of the bell curve target most people. Built something new that reestablishes Fischer's credibility in the performance boot market. It's been there on the race boot side, but we know not everybody wants to ski a race boot. It's been there on the touring side, but we need to have something that is really no frills performance, gets good skiers to have an even better time, and for an intermediate skier to really help improve. A reliable boot for a boot fitter as well, so that they don't need to be worried about grabbing it off the shelf. A reliable first fit, easy to use, and then very workable as needed. That it's an easy choice to grab for.
Yeah, hitting all the targets there. That's really interesting. So let's get into it. I mean, please introduce the boot.
Yeah, we've got one standing here. It's a 100 millimeter last in a 26.5. It's different it's a new last for the Fischer collection, so it's somewhat similar to a Ranger, but has been modified, especially in the instep, especially in the heel, especially in the toe box. We took a close look at all of the scan data we've collected, so we've been running scan apps, and through our vacuum stations have also been collecting scan data. That gave us a good starting point as well. We knew that the BOA system was coming. We've been in conversation with them. We are co-located in Austria, near in Upper Austria. It's a short drive from us to them. And this kind of influenced the last building, that we knew the BOA was coming. How can we shape this to give it maximum wrapping, but still staying watertight? So that kind of to last construction. And then from the shell side of things, performance, going back to RC4, was speaking and working with race boot developers to talk about what makes a race boot go, what gives it this horsepower, and adding sole thickness, wall thickness in areas that give it a sturdy chassis that help it perform in that direction of a true race boot, ergo performance boot. That's kind of to the geometry and the concept. Of course, the cuff came new as well. In all of this, we knew we had to make something that was easy to get in and out of, had that good first fit, would wrap. And we feel like we really achieved that. On the cuff, one big area of focus was support to the rear. So for a really strong skier, in a day like today where you're sort of out of control,
a lot of chop,
new snow chops are out of control.
Is constantly changing.
You want that spine to really support you, that you don't wheelie over the back. But also for an intermediate beginner skier, like if the boot has a flex isn't there for you, that's really, really scary. So we wanted to make that super solid. Informed the choice to kind of borrow some canting pieces, some concepts that have been very successful from our race side. So all that to, I guess, shell geometry. One point to add is the grip block sole. So we standard mounted grip block across all of the RC4 boots, but not just the RC4 MV boots, the LVs and the HVs as well. So that's one standard part, keeping it simple.
There might be a little bit of pushback, but I'm sure there's alpine soles.
There are alpine soles. We are seeing that. I think we've gotten there with the fact that they normed it in the 23223 norm. We're seeing it everywhere, and I think most of the competitors are putting it there. We get less and less requests to switch it. It's a huge benefit for the skier.
Yes.
Going the direction of, I guess, one more thing on the mold side. What we have here is the BOA version. We did build versions with buckles, and I can tell you, I think we're going to end up making way more BOA boots than buckles, or selling that many more, given the trends and the feedback we've seen so far. At the beginning, we weren't sure, but was really cool for us to have that comparison as well, to see what the BOA really does. And from the lineup side of things, there are RC4 MV boots with buckles that don't have the BOA. It is also a brand new boot, but again, most of the attention, fanfare right now is directed towards the BOA, with good reason.
Absolutely. And to be very clear, the BOA is only on the MV version.
Correct, and that's a good question. This is probably the most asked question we get is, does it exist on others? Can we just add it? And it cannot quickly be added, and the answer to your question is no, it is not on other concepts. This new Alpine system from BOA is only on the MV boots because, as you can see also with the integrations, it can't just be added after the fact. It needs to be integrated from the very beginning, also informed by how you shape the last to actually get it to function. Probably going to be more in coming years. I think the industry is making a pivot here, more to see, but MV boots are the only ones with BOA.
Yeah, so really interesting to hear the mold process and all that went into that, especially when it came to actually building a last from the ground up into this new RC4 MV boot. And especially that you were able to utilize some of that vacuum technology to collect more data and, really build a boot from the ground up. That's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, was an eye-opening experience. In my time at Fischer was the first boot that we built from the very ground up, where I got to be from the idea on napkin paper through to the end. And it's a little nerve-wracking sometimes, some of the decisions where you're sitting in front of a blank computer screen in reality and saying, how should it be? What shape should it have? And there's a bajillion decisions that go into that. We're really, really happy with what we've got here. The feedback's been great. And I think there's a boot within this category really for everybody, and I think that's something that's been special. You mentioned vacuum before. Most of the boots in the collection are all still featuring our vacuum plastic, and I think it's probably...
Yeah, let's talk about that. I mean, first of all, maybe just give an overview of plastic composition from this new boot, and then also what vacuum still means to you guys and how it's being integrated into your boot series.
Yeah, I think it bears discussion, and I think it's something that is not maybe necessarily understood by everybody. Fischer launched vacuum 2010-ish as a fitting tool, and in the process developed a new plastic, this vacuum plastic.
Yeah. And it was quite revolutionary.
Revolutionary. It was the first adjustable plastic, heat moldable plastic. There's a lot of plastics on the market, but really vacuum was the pioneer of that. The reason vacuum came to be was we had one last at the time. Fischer was getting into the performance boot making business, but really only had one last. We needed a system to make that boot as fittable for the widest number of feet. That was over a decade ago now. We've developed, and I think this boot on the table is a testament to that. We're still committed to the vacuum plastic and the vacuum process, but they are two separate things and that have their own benefits. And where we are now is building boots that fit better to begin with, where we don't immediately have to come with guarantees about being able to adjust it to some extreme degree to make it fit. Our hope, and I think for every dealer out there, for every end consumer, is to get into a boot that fits as good as possible out of the box without needing as much work as possible. So the vacuum plastic that we're using in our shells is on version 7 or 8 by now, is continuing to be optimized. Was an original development out of the race side of things, but it has certain special properties. It's lighter, it's less temperature affected, so it stays a little more consistent of a flex throughout the temperature change, and it is adjustable at a lower temperature. From there, it gets the vacuum fitting. That and all the technologies we've developed to date are compatible with all these boots, including the RC4 MV BOA boots, can continue to be fit with all the vacuum stations. We've made some steps to develop smaller stations. We have Zone Fit, a small suitcase with pads that can be locally placed. That works super well with the vacuum. But the point being, not all of our boots featuring the vacuum plastic need to be vacuum molded to ski. It's an added benefit, but even if you never vacuum mold a boot, you're getting benefits from the plastic the way it is.
Yeah, fascinating, and especially knowing that it's very rare in the boot world where you can actually like shrink or kind of bring that fit to shrink as you're molding. So pretty amazing that you guys have been able to accomplish that.
Yeah, I think it gives us and a boot fitter another lever to pull in the boot selection process. Requires understanding these changes, that the fit will change a little bit depending on which plastic is selected. But I think for the core scene out there, this is something that makes it easier and helps make the skiers out there get the best product possible for their needs. So
then we've touched on LV, we've touched on MV. There's another thing happening here with a high volume boot from you guys. So do you want to dive into that?
Yeah, we have the high volume boot, is a 102 millimeter lasted. Is comparable from fit and ski performance to our Ranger 1 boots, which are known and loved on the freeride side of things. This is also a vacuum shell grip walked boot. It has an easy entry flap to enable a super easy entry. We have it in a 130, 120, 110, so we have the whole range covered for that wider fit. Again, at this point, no BOA, but we really do have the range. All the boots feature the same design language, so really it's designed that the customer should not choose a boot based on the colorway they like. You can get the 130, you can get the 105 in the same colorway in an LV, MV, or HV, depending on what's right for you and your foot.
And same goes for the MV, you have the 130, 120, 110?
Correct. In the MV Constellation, we have one time a Pro model up top, but I think we'll get more into that. Starting with the standard vacuum boots, we have a 130, a 120, both with BOA. We have a 105 with BOA, and then we jump to the buckle boots.
And I've been skiing the 105 with BOA
the
last few days, and that's been a pretty incredible experience.
Yeah. I look forward to hearing the official verdict. I think in that range we're going to give you a couple other boots to compare, a BOA and a buckle boot, and what we were just talking about, vacuum and TPU shells. In addition to different liner or inner boot options, where I think you can see how much different options there exist in this RC4 MV range alone, not even considering the LV and the HV, that there is really a world of possibilities here. Yeah,
it'll be great to break out some of those variables and do some true A/B testing, so
exactly.
I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
So I know you've mentioned it a couple times, and it's been a pretty exciting thing. The buzz has definitely been circulating, and I want to get way more into the details with it. So we have the RC4 Pro, and there's a few differences there, and I think a big one is one of the partnerships that kind of came into play in the development of this boot, but let's just hear all about the RC4 Pro.
Yeah, to start with the RC4 Pro, there's actually two of them. So there's the LV and the MV. They follow the same molds that we discussed before. But the standout feature that is sitting next to us on the table here is the RC4 ZipFit inner boot liner, if you will, that we have in both Pro models out of the box.
Yeah, and let's just be really clear. This is the first ZipFit you can buy stock in a boot.
Correct. Which is huge for us. Was we wanted to reach that core consumer that skis a lot, who needs that performance, needs that durability. And we know the way they're getting that boot today is they're buying a standard boot and throwing away a liner. an opportunity came up. I was in the right place at the right time, and through connections, Ski World being what it is, got in touch with Chris and Jeff at ZipFit, and we've been working on this idea for the last 2-3 years, and are super stoked to bring it now. As you mentioned, yeah, really the first out-of-the-box option, and for me, I think that already makes it just the best boot off the shelf available. It is a collaborative development, collaborative design with ZipFit. It is a true ZipFit. To make that clear.
No compromises.
No compromises. It was based off of a Gara LV, but it's become its own since then. We made some material choices and really paired it specifically to the RC4 MV shell. We wanted that to work perfectly. We brought some of our own materials to the table, and I think functionally was improved the lacing system. Fischer Nordic department has made and patented some cool pieces that we were able to implement that I think raises the quality of a great product even higher. Featuring most of the same unique characteristics of a ZipFit, from OM Fit cork to the 3 cork pouches, the merino lined toe box. There are some other differences, but in its entirety, it is a tried and true ZipFit.
Yeah, which of course I think we all expected that of ZipFit. If they were going to partner, they were not going to compromise or get rid of what makes a ZipFit.
Absolutely.
And for those that love ZipFit liners, I'm sure this is just amazing news to a lot of people. And I know that you have now spent quite a bit of time in this RC4 Pro with the ZipFit. So, I mean, from your experience, what has this been like?
For me, it's really warm. It's something even today. I mean, today was really cold and was loving that I wasn't cold. So warmth is like something that jumps out right away. In terms of the fit, the amount of performance added, I equate it usually to adding 10 to 15 flex points to your boot. It just fills up all the voids in that fit that just lets the shell function as it should, prevents the shell from collapsing, bulging in places where it shouldn't. Heel hold, ankle area, it just gets there. Very adjustable with cork. I have to say mine, and I don't know how visible it is on the video, it's seen some days, has at least 50 days in it. Have added a little bit of cork to the tongue, but haven't done any adjustments there. Really psyched with how that works. And it's, I mean, yesterday I kept my boots on all day. It's just one of those things that makes you happy to be in your boots all day long. And yeah, psyched to have them on board. This partnership, it looks promising.
Amazing to hear about the ZipFit integration, and I guess let's just hear more about the boot itself.
Yeah, ZipFit catches most attention, and plenty more info to be found on that if you need it. But continuing on the pros, we talked about the TPU versus vacuum shells. To reiterate, the TPU shrinks a little bit more. So for the same size, for the same model, you're just going to get a little bit of a snugger, a little bit of a shorter fit. We're talking about a millimeter and a half, but it's noticeable, and it's something you're going to be able to test and maybe give some more feedback on. But there's, on the cuff, we're also using a carbon fuse technology. It means we're taking carbon fibers and co-injecting them into the cuff to give the cuff more performance and a little bit more stiffness for this Pro model.
And that's something that has never been done till?
We haven't had it in our collection. Some competitors have been experimenting with the technology. The technology is not brand new. It's something we have also on the touring side, on the Trans Alp boots. We have a top model also featuring this carbon fused cuff. We have it on a lot of our classic carbon skating Nordic boots. So it's something we have experience with, and putting together this Pro model, really a model that's designed for a ski professional, a really core skier, somebody who's getting 50 to 100 days a year out there, uncompromising performance. Therefore, ZipFit, let's add the carbon fuse to give it a little bit more performance, that TPU shell, really snug fit, and that, differentiates it another level.
And when it comes to the RC4 Pro or the RC4 series in general, what are we looking at as far as forward leans, and do we have any adjustment there or adjustment when it comes to stiffness?
On the LV boots, we have the adjustability between 14 and 17 degrees. There's a removable backbone. Mm-hmm. On the MV boots, we're at 16 degrees, which is upright enough for, we think, the mass market, and can be tuned a little bit more forward with work on the boot board or forward lean spoilers. The HV is a little bit more upright at 15. I think it's published also at 16, but it's a tick more upright than the MV. The flexes stay as they are. Mm-hmm. Fischer is offering the RC4 ZipFit inner boots as standalone liners. Okay. And for me, that's the first thing that comes to mind in terms of adjusting stiffness, adjusting flex. I think you can attest, but it does change how a boot skis and flexes. It's, of course, an investment and not for everybody, but that's something that we're emphasizing as well, that if you buy the 105 MV BOA boot and want to tune it a little bit and add a little bit more horsepower, it's really easy to get the RC4 MV ZipFit inner boot and stick it in there, and you're basically on that pro level.
With the MV as one of the staple products in this line, and kind of the one that a lot of development was put into. It was great to hear all those details, but just to be really clear and so people can know what the options are, what do we have as far as the RC4 MV lineup for the 23-24 season?
So on the Pro Series, on the MV last, we have BOA, we have the carbon fuse cuff, and the ZipFit inner boot. And on the LV side, we have buckles, but we have the carbon fuse cuff and the ZipFit inner boot as well.
And you just mentioned the women's lineup. Let's just talk a bit about your women's-specific ski boots and what that means. I know you guys do a lot of unisex development, and I'm not sure on the boot side, other than potentially size offerings, what is unique about the women's boot?
Yeah, the women's models are given a size run, of course, starting at 22, going up to 27. It's difficult to get the stiffer flexes made in the smaller sizes. I know the outcry, and it's something we're aware of and pushing on. But on the technical side of things, we do most of the changes in the liner. Mm-hmm. We're using different insulation. We're using Primaloft padding to make the liners a bit warmer. And we also have a different shape of the collar to try to accommodate the calf muscle there. It's something we're continuing to work on, and as I mentioned at the very beginning, with scan data as well, working to expand our panel of testers on the women's front, and we've got a lot of things in the works to kind of continue to push this women's side of things. Mm-hmm. But the feedback we've been hearing so far, this RC4 MV BOA boot is working really well for ladies as well.
All right, good to hear. Yeah, and I always like to know the details and some of what those women-specific attributes really are. So. Yeah,
I mean the women-specific fit is a rabbit hole as well, and it's been interesting as we've started to focus on this more and more, of trying to define that in a 3D scan of what makes a woman's foot, because it's also not black and white either.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Christoph, it was awesome to hear all about the RC4 series. You guys have done a lot on that side for this upcoming season, and I'm sure a lot of people will be excited to try them, ski them, buy them, and having so many unique offerings is also really cool. So there's a lot out there for the different feet and the different consumers. I look forward to hearing your panel tonight, and thanks again for joining us at the Blister Summit.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always a blast to be here.